The world never really slept for Lena. While everyone around her drifted off within minutes of closing their eyes, she lay staring at ceilings, counting cracks, mapping shadows, bargaining with a darkness that never answered. Doctors called it chronic insomnia. Lena called it her curse. It had been 6 years since she last slept a full night. 6 years of pills, clinics, teas, and therapy. 6 years of watching the sun rise every single morning. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. She was 28, dark eyes that always looked like they had seen too much. A mouth that smiled rarely but devastatingly when it did. Beautiful in the way storms are beautiful. Striking, restless, impossible to ignore. It was on one of those sleepless nights that she found the forum post. Buried deep, almost hidden, from a user called Northern Drifter 88. Don't go looking for Halvörn if you want to stay awake. I passed through by accident, fell asleep before I reached the harbor, woke up 12 hours later. The woman at the desk just smiled and said, "It happens to everyone. Never slept better in my life before or since." Lena read it 3 times. She searched for Halvörn. There wasn't much. A stone harbor, iron lanterns, coastal cliffs so steep that no road had ever been built. The only way in or out, a mid-sized passenger ferry. Once a week, every Thursday, she checked the date. Tuesday, she booked a flight to Norway. She packed light, 1 bag, dark clothes. She told no one. There was no one to tell. On Wednesday evening, she stood on the Ålesund. Dark as snow began to fall from a sky the color of deep water. The ferry was smaller than she expected. Weathered white paint, fogged windows. A low hum she felt more than heard. A hand-painted sign on the boarding ramp read, "Halvörn, departure, 06 Thursday." A man in a heavy coat checked her ticket without looking up. "First time?" he asked. "Yes," Lena said. He looked at her then. Something moved behind his eyes. "Sleep well," he said, and handed back her ticket. Lena stepped aboard and found a window seat. Outside, the snow thickened. The harbor lights blurred into soft gold. The sea moved in slow, heavy swells beneath the hull. For the first time in 6 years, her eyes felt heavy. She didn't trust it. She never trusted it. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and watched the lights disappear behind the curtain of falling snow, and somewhere in the back of her mind, quiet as a whisper, something said, "You are almost there." She did not know whose voice it was. Halvörn appeared through the mist like something the cliffs had always been hiding. Stone houses, dark timber beams, narrow paths dusted with snow, iron lanterns still burning along the harbor wall. Even as pale morning light crept across the water, a lighthouse on the furthest rock, its beams sweeping slow and patient through the fog. 30 structures at most, a church, a shop, an inn set high on a natural shelf of rock, overlooking everything. Lena stepped off the ferry and breathed. The air was different here, not calming exactly, deeper than calm. It was the feeling of a sound you have been hearing so long you stop noticing it, and then suddenly it stops. And the silence is so complete it feels like a living thing. The constant static in Lena's chest, the anxiety, the restless electricity that had lived behind her sternum for 6 years. Or it went quiet, just quiet. First visit? The woman standing near the harbor wall was perhaps 60. Silver hair, eyes the pale gray of winter ice. She looked at Lena, the way people look at something they have been expecting. "I'm Astrid. I run the inn." She nodded toward the stone building above. "You'll want to rest before you explore." "Everyone does." "I don't really sleep," Lena said. A reflex, 6 years of explaining herself. Astrid smiled. "You will hear," she said simply. The inn was warm inside, not the aggressive heat of radiators, but the deep warmth of thick walls and a wood stove that had been burning for decades. Lena's room was small and perfect. A narrow bed, heavy wool blankets, a window facing the sea, a single candle on the sill that Astrid lit without being asked. "Dinner at 6 if you wake for it," Astrid said at the door. "Breakfast whenever." She paused. "There are no locks on the rooms here. No one has ever needed them." Lena sat on the edge of the bed. Through the window, the harbor, the lanterns, the dark sea, and the lighthouse beam crossing, the water again, and Again, like something searching, she lay back, just to rest her eyes. She was asleep before she finished the thought. Not shallow half-sleep, not medicated fog, something else entirely. Vast and dark and warm, like sinking into water that was exactly the temperature of your own blood. No thoughts, no ceiling to count, nothing to bargain with, only down and deeper down, and then nothing at all. She slept for 14 hours. When she woke, the candle had burned low and the window was full of stars. The sound of the sea was so close and so steady, it felt like breathing, like the town itself was alive around her. She lay still for a long time. Then she remembered. She had dreamed, and in the dream, someone had been speaking to her. She couldn't remember the words, only the feeling they left. The way certain music leaves a vibration in your chest long after the song ends. And one other thing, the voice had known her name. She found Astrid at the harbor that night. The snow had stopped. The air was crystalline and still. Every lantern burned amber. The sea moved in long dark swells beyond the iron fence, churning white against the cliff rocks below. "You dreamed?" Astrid said. She wasn't asking. "Someone knew my name," Lena said. "In the dream? How is that possible?" Astrid was quiet for a moment. The lighthouse beam passed overhead. "Old places carry old things," she said finally. "The people who built Halvörn, they chose this rock because something here was right. Not just the harbor, not just the cliffs, something else. Something they didn't have a word for." She paused. "After enough generations, it becomes part of the place. Part of what the air carries." "What does it want?" Lena asked. "It doesn't want anything. It simply remembers." Astrid looked at her. "The ones who cannot sleep. They are the ones who forgot something important. Something their body knew once and lost. Here the forgetting stops." Lena stared at the lighthouse beam crossing the water. "The voice said my name," she said again. "It said you came back." Silence. "I've never been here before," Lena said. Astrid smiled. That same small, knowing smile. "Sleep again tomorrow," she said. "The third night is when it becomes clear." She walked back toward the inn. Lena stood alone at the harbor wall. "You came back." She turned the words over and over. She had never been to Norway before. She had never heard of Halvörn before 3 days ago. She had no family here, no history here, nothing that could explain a voice in a dream that spoke as though it had been waiting for her, not for days, but for years, decades, maybe longer. The ferry came back Thursday morning. She did not get on it. She watched it from her window, the weathered white hull pulling slowly away from the dock. The other passengers aboard, growing smaller as it crossed the gray water and disappeared into the mist. She had one more night. She needed to hear the voice again. She needed to know what it had been trying to tell her. That night she lay down before dark. The candle burned on the sill. The sea breathed outside the glass. The lighthouse swept its slow arc. And Halvörn, old, quiet, patient, Halvörn, settled around her like something that had been waiting a very long time. She closed her eyes. The voice came immediately this time, closer, clearer. It said her name, and then it said, "Do you remember now why you could never sleep out there?" Lena's breath stopped, because she did remember. She remembered everything, and somewhere across the dark water, the next ferry was already turning toward Halvörn, carrying 6 new passengers, all of them restless, all of them searching, all of them certain they had never been here before.